If you feel like prices are rising even when the sticker price looks the same, you're not imagining it. A huge part of today's cost of living hides in plain sight: tips you didn't expect, fees added at the last second, and optional upgrades that feel mandatory. In this video, we're going to walk through 15 everyday ways your total climbs, why it's happening right now, and simple moves you can use to keep more of your money. Number 15 is tip prompts, the ones that pop up everywhere, even in places that never used to ask. This is not just your feed talking. A large national survey by Pew Research found that around 7 in 10 U.S. adults say tipping is expected in more places today than it was 5 years ago. And only about a third say it's very easy to know whether to tip or how much to tip in different situations. What changed? One big driver is that more payments now run through tablets and touchscreens, and the tip screen is built into the checkout flow. The default buttons are often a set of percentages, and those options can anchor your brain. If the first button you see is higher than what you used to tip, your normal starts sliding upward without a single price tag changing. That's hidden inflation with a friendly smile. There's also something uncomfortable going on. The moment of decision is public. The person who just handed you your coffee is standing there, and the screen is asking if you want to be generous. Even if nobody says a word, a lot of people feel watched. That pressure is part of the design of the moment, not necessarily the personality of the worker. And there's a second layer people rarely think about. A tip prompt can appear even when the business model is not the classic tipped wage situation. In some settings, tips might be pooled, split, or handled differently than you assume, and the screen usually won't explain it. The practical move is simple but powerful. Slow down by one breath and treat that tip screen like a question, not a command. Decide your own rule in advance. Maybe you tip for table service, delivery, and haircuts, but you go lighter or skip for counter service. Or you tip in cash when you want to be sure it goes a certain way. The point is not to be stingy. The point is to keep your choices from being rewritten by a default button. Number 14 is the service charge, the automatic gratuity, and the wellness, or kitchen appreciation line that quietly changes the final bill. This one hits because it feels like tipping, but it doesn't always behave like tipping. A tip is usually framed as voluntary. A service charge often isn't. Sometimes it's clearly stated. Sometimes it's buried in small print on a menu or a sign near the register. And sometimes it shows up only after you already committed, especially with large parties or events. The most important thing to know is that a service charge is not automatically the same thing as a tip in how it's treated internally. In some places, it may go to staff like a tip. In other places, it can be used differently. That difference matters because you can end up paying twice without meaning to, once through the service charge and again through an additional tip you thought was expected. This is where hidden inflation gets political without needing a political fight. Businesses are under pressure from rising labor costs and customer resistance to higher menu prices. A service charge is a way to raise the real price while keeping the headline price looking stable. It can also help a business promise more predictable pay. But the problem is transparency. If the customer can't tell what's mandatory, what's optional, and what's actually going to workers, the customer can't make a clean decision. Your move is boring but effective. Scan the menu for phrases like service charge, automatic gratuity, or administrative fee, especially for group dining. If you see it, ask one calm question. Is this in place of a tip, or is a tip still expected? If the answer is unclear, treat that as your information. Pay what's required, then tip based on what you believe is fair, not on what the screen makes you feel. Number 13 is ticket fees, the kind that make you feel like you're paying a cover charge to pay a cover charge. Here's a hard data point that helps explain the rage. In a U.S. Government Accountability Office review of a non-generalizable sample of events, total fees averaged about 27% of the ticket's price in the primary market and about 31% in the secondary market. That's not a small rounding error. And the GAO also noted that some websites didn't clearly show fees until late in the process after users had already invested time and typed in payment details. That pattern matters because time is a trap. After you've picked seats, coordinated with friends, and imagined the night, it becomes harder to walk away. Your brain starts treating the extra charges as the cost of getting it done, not as a price increase you should challenge. Now layer on the resale world. The GAO discussed how professional resellers can have advantages, including speed tools that scoop up tickets quickly, pushing regular people into higher-priced resale options. Even if you never touch resale, the overall ecosystem normalizes higher totals. The practical moves are not glamorous, but they work. Start your search with total cost in mind, not face value. If a site hides fees until the end, back out and compare. Sometimes buying directly from a venue box office, if available, reduces some of the extra layers. Sometimes waiting for a later drop or a less in-demand day changes the total more than arguing about the base price. And if you're buying for a group, decide a hard ceiling per person before you even start clicking, because once you start clicking, the ceiling tends to float. Ticketmaster gets brought up a lot in these conversations because it's one of the most recognizable names in ticketing, but the bigger issue is not one logo. The bigger issue is the structure of the checkout. If the fee is unavoidable, it functions like price. If it's price, people deserve to see it up front, not as a surprise after they've already committed emotionally. That's why all-in pricing matters. When the total is shown early, you get your power back because you can compare honestly and walk away without feeling like you wasted an hour. Number 12 is delivery apps, where the price you think you're paying is often not the price you end up paying. This is one of the cleanest examples of hidden inflation because the extra charges come in layers, fees, tips, and sometimes higher menu prices than you'd see in person. A finance site study summarized in news reporting found that ordering delivery through major apps could cost close to double compared with pickup, depending on the platform and the order. That doesn't mean every order doubles every time, but it does mean the convenience premium can be way bigger than people assume when they tap reorder on autopilot. What makes it sneaky is that your brain doesn't do a full spreadsheet each time. You remember the rough price of the meal, not the full stack. And the stack can include things like small order fees, delivery fees, service fees, and priority delivery add-ons. Even if each one seems small, together they behave like inflation. You pay more for the same dinner, and it becomes normal because you keep doing it. There's also a quiet logic problem. Many people tip as a moral act to support workers, but then the platform also adds fees that don't feel like supporting workers. So the customer feels squeezed, the worker still feels underpaid, and the platform's model keeps humming. That tension is part of why this topic gets heated. DoorDash is a good example of how the checkout can turn one meal into a mini bill. Reporting has described how fees can include a service fee structure that can vary by order and location, plus other charges that stack on top of menu prices. The key thing for your wallet is not the fine print, it's the habit. If you want delivery sometimes, set a delivery budget rule like this. Delivery is for nights when time is truly scarce, not for nights when you're simply tired. And when you do order, compare the final total with what pickup would cost before you hit place order. That one comparison breaks the spell. Uber Eats runs on the same basic math problem. You're buying time, and the platform has to pay drivers, cover operations, and make profit, so the money shows up somewhere in the total. The trap is when delivery stops feeling like a premium and starts feeling like the default. One way to keep it from becoming hidden inflation is to create your own default that fights back. Keep 2 backup meals at home that you actually like, not emergency sadness food. When the choice is between paying extra fees or eating something you already enjoy, you'll be surprised how often you pick the home option. Grubhub is part of the same ecosystem, and the consumer experience is often similar. The real price is the final price, not the menu price you first see. One simple move that saves money without changing your life is to toggle between delivery and pickup inside the app before checkout, just to see the difference. If the difference makes you laugh in a bad way, you've just saved yourself from hidden inflation in real time. Number 11 is hotel fees, especially resort fees and destination fees. The daily charges that aren't the room rate but behave like the room rate because you can't opt out. NerdWallet analyzed a set of hotels and found that among the hotels in its analysis that charged resort fees, the average resort fee was $33 per day. The emotional sting here is that people often book based on the nightly rate, then feel tricked when the real nightly rate is higher after the fees land. And those fees can still apply even when you book with points, which makes people feel like they're paying twice, once in points and once in cash. This is exactly why regulators started focusing on junk fees in travel and tickets. In late 2024, the Federal Trade Commission announced a rule aimed at banning junk ticket and hotel fees in the sense of requiring clearer, upfront total price information in those markets, because surprise mandatory fees waste people's time and distort comparison shopping. That last phrase matters. Comparison shopping is the whole point of online booking. If the real price is hidden, you can't compare, and the market stops working normally. The move here is to treat your first price as a draft. Always look for the total with fees before you decide a place is cheap. And when you're traveling, decide what you actually value. If a hotel charges a daily fee for amenities you won't use, you're paying for a fantasy version of your trip, not your real trip. Sometimes the most expensive room rate is actually the best deal because it's honest. The fee game punishes people who only shop by the headline number. Airbnb is worth mentioning because it helped make cleaning fees a household phrase. The lesson is bigger than one platform. Whenever a listing has multiple price parts, your brain fixates on the nightly rate and discounts the extras. The move is to compare totals across options that include every mandatory charge, then decide. If you use a travel budget, budget the total, not the headline. Number 10 is airline add-ons, where the base fare can look like a deal, but the real trip cost depends on what you need to bring and how you want to sit. The U.S. Department of Transportation's Bureau of Transportation Statistics reported that U.S. airlines collected about $7.3 billion in baggage fees in 2024, and about $1.0 billion in reservation change fees. That tells you something simple. These are not side hustles. They are meaningful revenue streams. When a revenue stream gets that big, it becomes part of the business strategy. And strategies don't disappear because customers complain. They only change when customers change behavior or rules change. There's also a transparency fight around this. In mid-2024, Reuters reported that a U.S. appeals court blocked a Department of Transportation rule that would have required upfront disclosure of airline service fees alongside the airfare, at least while the rule faced full review. And the same reporting described the Department of Transportation saying consumers were overpaying hundreds of millions of dollars a year in fees because of surprises like having to pay a higher fee at the airport to check a bag. That is hidden inflation in its purest form. You don't plan for it, so you pay a penalty price. Your move is to shop like a person, not like a headline. Before you buy, decide, will you check a bag, carry on, choose a seat, or need flexibility? If yes, price those in from the beginning. Sometimes a slightly higher fare from the start is cheaper after you add what you actually need. Also, watch timing. If a fee is lower when paid in advance online, that's basically a planning discount and an airport procrastination tax. If you know you'll need it, buy it early. Number 9 is bank fees, especially overdraft and non-sufficient funds fees, which can turn a small mistake into a big hit. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau reported that for the full year 2023, combined reported bank overdraft and non-sufficient funds fee revenue was about $5.83 billion, down sharply from earlier years after many large banks changed their policies. The good news is that reforms and competition have pushed some of these fees down. But the bad news is that for the people who still get hit, the fee can be brutal compared with the size of the purchase that triggered it. Here's a detail that shows why people call overdraft a small dollar credit that doesn't feel like credit. A CFPB report discussing typical overdraft episodes referenced a median overdraft fee of $34, a median overdraft transaction amount of $50, and a median episode length of 3 days, which implies an annual percentage rate in the thousands of percent. That's not a moral judgment, it's just math. And it explains why a single timing problem, like a deposit posting later than expected or a bill hitting earlier than expected, can feel like you got mugged by your own checking account. This is where hidden inflation targets the people who can least afford it, because overdraft fees don't hit everyone equally. They hit people living closer to the edge. So the moves here are not fancy investing tips, they're friction reducers. Turn on low balance alerts. Link a savings account for overdraft transfers if your bank offers it. Ask your bank whether you can opt out of certain overdraft coverage that turns a declined card into an approved transaction plus a fee. If you're paid on a schedule, align your bill due dates with your paydays if you can. And if you do get hit, call and ask for a one-time courtesy waiver. Many banks have some flexibility, especially if it's not a repeated pattern. One phone call can erase a whole week of groceries worth of pain. Number 8 is credit card penalties, especially late fees, returned payment fees, and the sneaky cost of carrying a balance because you missed one tiny deadline. This is a place where hidden inflation is less about a checkout screen and more about life happening. You meant to pay, you forgot, or you paid from the wrong account. And then the fee lands, and sometimes the interest situation shifts too. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau finalized a rule in 2024 that would have reduced the safe harbor late fee amount for certain large card issuers to $8. But the rule was blocked in court, and later developments indicated it would not take effect as originally designed. The details of the legal back and forth matter for policy, but for your wallet, the takeaway is simpler. The system still relies heavily on penalties, and penalties thrive on forgetfulness. So the best defense is automation that you control. Set autopay for at least the minimum payment, even if you still plan to pay the full statement balance manually. That way your "I forgot" turns into "I paid the minimum and avoided the fee," which is a massive difference. If you hate autopay, set calendar reminders and change your due date to a time of month when you're less likely to be slammed. Many issuers let you choose. And if you do get hit with a late fee, don't just eat it in silence. Call and ask politely if it can be waived, especially if you have a good history. A surprising number of people never ask, and the bank has no incentive to volunteer. Number 7 is buy now, pay later, which can feel like a gentle way to afford something right up until the payments stack and your budget starts leaking. A Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond brief in early 2026 noted indicative evidence from surveys that late payments among buy now, pay later users have increased, citing a 2025 survey result that a large share of users reported making at least one late payment in the past year. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has published market reporting on this space, including discussion of late fees and how firms handle them. This is one of those products where the hidden inflation is not always in the price of the thing. It's in the way the payment plan multiplies your commitments. The human brain is not great at tracking 6 different little payment schedules across different apps. Each one feels small. Together they can become a second rent. And because many buy now, pay later plans split a purchase into multiple chunks, the pain is delayed. You get the item now and the budget pain later, which is basically the oldest trick in consumer finance. The move is to give yourself a hard limit. No more than 1 or 2 active plans at a time, and no plans for things that disappear quickly, like food or small impulse buys. If you use these plans, put the payment dates in the same calendar you use for everything else, not in your head, and treat a missed payment as a warning light, not as bad luck. If you missed one, you probably have too many. Number 6 is subscriptions, memberships, and auto-renewals, where the hidden inflation isn't just the monthly price, it's the friction of leaving. The Federal Trade Commission announced a final click-to-cancel rule in October of 2024, aimed at making cancellation as easy as sign-up after receiving more than 16,000 public comments. But in July of 2025, Reuters reported that a U.S. appeals court blocked the rule, saying the agency failed to follow required steps in the rulemaking process. Whether you love or hate regulation, the everyday reality is this. Many companies still benefit when cancellation is confusing, time-consuming, or slightly annoying. Hidden inflation here comes from a simple pattern. You sign up during a free trial or a discounted first month. You tell yourself you'll cancel later. Later arrives during a busy week. You keep paying. Then you keep paying again. And because the charge is relatively small compared with rent or groceries, it hides in your statement like dust. The way to beat this is not willpower. It's systems. The day you sign up, create a cancellation reminder for a few days before renewal. If you truly love the service, you can keep it. If you don't, you escape before the money leaks. Another move is the subscription audit. Once a month, look at your statements and circle every recurring charge. If you can't explain what it is in 2 seconds, that's a red flag. Cancel the mystery charges first. They are almost always hidden inflation. Number 5 is personalized pricing and algorithm experiments that can make the same item cost different amounts depending on how, when, or where you shop. This topic gets messy fast, so let's keep it grounded. A consumer watchdog investigation reported in late 2025 that a grocery delivery company had offered technology that allowed retailers to charge different prices to different customers in an AI pricing experiment, and the report later said the company stopped offering that technology after the investigation. That matters because it changes what price even means. If the price is not stable, comparison shopping gets harder, and hidden inflation becomes harder to detect because you can't easily tell whether the increase is real, temporary, personalized, or simply random. Instacart is a name that comes up in this conversation because it sits between shoppers and retailers, and small changes in how prices are presented can change what people pay. The practical move is to treat your cart like a draft. If you're buying staples, compare the price per unit across brands and sizes instead of trusting the first number you see. If a price looks off, search the same item in another way inside the app, or compare with the store's own site if that's available. And if you notice a pattern of "it feels higher every time," take screenshots or keep one old receipt. Memory lies. Receipts don't. It's also worth noting that not every fear about surge pricing in physical grocery stores has been confirmed. Researchers analyzing very large sets of product-level pricing data around electronic shelf label adoption reported finding no evidence that digital price tags led to real-time pricing spikes, even during inflationary periods. That's useful because it keeps the conversation honest. Some things are real problems. Some are scary stories that don't show up in the data. Your job as a consumer is not to panic. It's to verify, compare, and build habits that don't rely on trust alone. Number 4 is unit pricing tricks and per-item pricing that makes it harder to know what you're really paying. Most people think they're comparing prices, but they're often comparing packaging. A smaller bag can look cheaper, even if it costs more per ounce. A family size can look like a deal, even if the per-unit price is worse. And produce can be especially confusing if it's priced per item instead of by weight, because 2 pieces can be wildly different sizes. Reporting has highlighted consumer watchdog concerns in other countries about per-item produce pricing, reducing transparency for shoppers. You don't need to live in that country to learn the lesson. The lesson is universal. When the unit price is missing or hard to find, the seller has more power than you do. Hidden inflation here works by exhausting your attention. You're busy. You grab the thing that looks cheapest. You move on. A small per-unit loss repeated across a week becomes real money. The move is not to calculate everything. It's to pick a few categories where you always check unit pricing, like coffee, paper products, detergent, and snacks. And when unit pricing is not shown clearly, treat it as a signal that you should slow down. If you switch to the habit of buying by unit price in just a few categories, you'll feel the difference without turning shopping into a math exam. Number 3 is shrinkflation, the classic same price, smaller package, plus the quieter cousin, same package, fewer servings. People argue about whether shrinkflation is real inflation, because it can be harder to track than a simple price increase. But your pantry does not care what we call it. If you get less for the same money, you're paying more per unit. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has explained how it works to measure product downsizing and upsizing in the Consumer Price Index. And it has also created a research series to estimate the impact of size changes on inflation measures. That's important because it means the official inflation system is not blind to it. But it also confirms something people feel in daily life. The price is not just the sticker. It's the amount you get for that sticker. Shrinkflation also thrives because many of us don't notice size changes right away. Packaging can be redesigned to look taller or wider even when the contents shrink. Serving sizes can be adjusted so the label still shows a nice-looking number of servings. And because the product name stays the same, your brain treats it as the same item. The move here is to choose a few repeat buys and lock in a simple memory: the weight, the count, or the volume. Not everything, just a few. If your favorite snack quietly loses 2 ounces, you'll catch it. And once you start catching it, you'll notice how often you can beat it by switching brands, switching sizes, or buying from a place that emphasizes unit pricing. Number 2 is the junk fee crackdown and why it matters even if you never think about government. When fees are hidden until the end, the market stops working properly. People can't compare. Businesses that are transparent look expensive next to businesses that hide the full price. That encourages more hiding, not less. In December of 2024, the Federal Trade Commission announced a bipartisan rule aimed at banning junk ticket and hotel fees, and the FTC estimated the rule would save consumers up to 53 million hours per year of time wasted searching for total prices, with that time savings valued at more than $11 billion over the next decade. Whether you love rules or hate them, that estimate points to a real everyday pain. The hours we lose to checkout surprises. The deeper lesson is that time is money, even when no one calls it a fee. If you spend 30 minutes trying to find the real total, that's a hidden cost. If you give up and pay the surprise fee because you're tired, that's hidden inflation that feeds on your limited attention. So here's the practical move that turns policy into personal benefit. Make total price your default question. If the total isn't shown clearly, assume it will be worse than you want. If the total is shown clearly, reward that business with your money more often. Markets do respond, but only when customers do. Number 1 is your anti-hidden inflation routine, the simple set of habits that blocks the most common leaks without turning you into a paranoid person who can't enjoy life. First, treat every checkout like a two-step process. The advertised price is step 1, the total price is step 2. If step 2 surprises you, that's a signal, not a random event. Second, decide your own tipping rules ahead of time so a screen can't decide for you, and remember that a service charge is not always the same thing as a tip. Third, when you travel, price what you actually need, not what looks cheapest. Baggage, seats, and hotel fees are not extras if you can't realistically avoid them. Fourth, protect yourself from penalty fees with automation. Low balance alerts, minimum payment autopay, and calendar reminders for renewals. Fifth, shop by unit price in a few repeat categories and watch for shrinkflation, because less product for the same money is still a price increase, even when the sticker stands still. Now let's pull it together. Hidden inflation is the gap between what you think something costs and what it actually costs after prompts, fees, and friction do their work. The fix is not one magic trick. It's a handful of small habits that make the real price visible again. If you want, comment with this. Which one surprised you most? And where did you get hit last week? A tip prompt, a fee at checkout, or a subscription you forgot? If this helped, like the video, share it with one person who always says, inflation is down, while their receipt says otherwise, and subscribe for more practical money moves that don't require a finance degree.